I'm John Dennis. I'm running against Nancy Pelosi.
We have the most beautiful state and one of the most beautiful places in the world, and people are leaving.
I'm gonna catch you when all the cameras aren't around, and I'm gonna you up. Oh, try it.
He's the chairman of the San Francisco GOP, and he's running against House Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
Step back, everyone.
All right, everybody, come on in. Just finishing up a couple of little things here. Welcome to the John Dennis Report. Good to see you all today. I want to give a couple of plugs, if you don't mind. John Dennis Report on YouTube, Real John Dennis on Twitter, Real John Dennis on Instagram, and John Dennis Report on Facebook, which was new. As many of you know, I'm running against Nancy Pelosi. We have a congressional page as well on Facebook. If you want to follow us there, that's fine. That'd be great. And but I don't exclusively talk about the campaign on these reports, although I am going to talk a little bit about that today, because there are just so many broader issues, and that I'm going to sort of finish today's report with, is the broader issues that we're facing. Some crazy stuff going on in Washington, and it's there's an opportunity here to think about what the bigger issues are. So let me just give you a quick campaign update. I've said this before. So many people feel so strongly about Nancy Pelosi. They dislike her. That'll be the first kind step I'll take. They despise her. They hold her in contempt. They hate her. And years ago, we did a word map where we asked people to use one word to describe Nancy Pelosi. And, the result is the biggest word is the one that people most often use to describe her. And then there's other large words which are sort of, high in the, what people, when they see her image, and then smaller and smaller. The biggest word, guess what the biggest word is? Oh, we should probably do a poll on this on Twitter. The biggest word was arrogant. Hypocrisy was up there. Entitled was another one. And all of those things are unbelievably irritating, and they really get under people's skins. They also, I think, feel like this is not a studied person, not erudite by any stretch of the imagination, which leads to the most profoundly absurd proclamations by somebody like Nancy Pelosi. So, that's why they really despise her. Again, I'm going to circle back to this. It comes back to me, my previous life as a sales trainer and a sales manager. And I found that people of all different types of personalities can succeed. And what I tried to do, it's a really tricky thing to do when hiring people, is to try and find those characteristics which might not be necessarily apparent when you meet somebody, to see if they actually they've actually would do well in sales. And what you find is that successful sales professionals have come across the spectrum in terms of personality types, from very quiet people to big gregarious people. See, what happens is you get used to personalities, and you sort of look past those to see what other values and characteristics are really essential about that person. And so again, that's why I've never really despised Pelosi, but I got to tell you, as time goes on, I've really come to dislike what she's doing and what she is aiming for. And one of the things that was apparent about her when I first started getting in the Pelosi sphere as an opponent was that she doesn't really, I don't think she has a firm belief in many things. the one thing I think she really cares about more than anything is power. And there's this sort of like, obsessive, constant, pitch towards power, rush towards power. And now that we're in this really, absurd stage of American history where we're so polarized and people are so committed to their, and entrenched in their positions, she just looks more and more absurd, and her motivations are really, become much more evident as well. And her pursuits for power are perfectly fine as long as the country is functioning, but the country's getting pretty close to not being able to function anymore. And when I say the country, I'm not one of these people who conflates the government with the country, because the government is not the country. We are the country. But now what she's doing is, so if she's screwing up Washington, okay, that's one thing, because that is not the country. It's an element of the country. But now she's actually doing things that are going to really start screwing up the country in a big way. And it's all because of this unbridled pursuit of power, really dangerous sort of stuff. And if you look at her leadership, she's been in leadership since the early 2000s, and on the Democratic side. What's her tenure delivered? What is the country getting? What's the world getting from Nancy Pelosi as a leader in either party? I'm going to talk a little bit about some policy stuff, but I don't even want to I want to talk about the big, the big issues. Just look at the relations. Look at San Francisco. She's been a leader in San Francisco politics for over 3 decades, in her 4th decade now. And how is San Francisco doing? Pre-pandemic, during pandemic, even post-pandemic, what are the prospects here? Look at the relations between the parties. Nancy Pelosi is someone that the Republicans can reach out to negotiate on the issues on which there's some common ground. No. Look at how she treated Donald Trump. She never called Trump president. She called him the current occupant of the White House. How profoundly disrespectful and despicable, frankly, to do that sort of thing. And look at the impact, not just between her impact on San Francisco, her impact on the relationship between the parties. Look at her impact on working people. That's really the big thing. I can say now, I've been saying this in interviews, the Republican Party is the party of the working class. The Democrats felt like they had that grip because they were pro-union for so many decades, that they were the ones who were leading the the fighting on behalf of the working class. The Republicans do that now. The Democrats mock the working class. They mock them for eating at Olive Garden. They mock them for shopping at Walmart. They mock them. They call them privileged. And they're more concerned about keeping illegal immigrants in the country. And it's interesting because I'm going to come back to that illegal immigrant thing. But her impact across the board, from the working class to the city of San Francisco, everything she touches, she's like the reverse of Queen Midas. She's like, everything she touches turns to garbage. Everything. And there's a reason for that. I'm going to come back to that a little bit later. But anyway, it's sort of given me and my campaign a renewed vigor, because it feels like the stakes are really high in terms of removing her from power. We've got to get her into retirement. She's 80, going on 81 next month. I think she was ideologically compromised when she was 10 years ago. Now she's not only ideologically compromised, I think she's cognitively compromised too. And I hate to say that. I don't say that with it. I mean, she's not as sharp as she was 10 years ago. And I don't think that's an unfair thing to say about someone who's, 80 years old. But I think it's really showing in her her brittleness. She wasn't a big fan of being teased or being challenged 10 years ago. Now she's downright just not even going to deal with it. So it's come to the point where it's a massive impediment on the country. Notice, as the Speaker of the House, the person who is responsible for the purse strings of the country. Has anybody ever heard her talk about it? I've been following her for a long time, and maybe there was something said in passing, but it's certainly not a big theme for her to discuss the staggering level of federal debt. I mean, she's in charge of the budget, and she can't balance a budget. She's in charge of the purse strings, and we have an unprecedented level of non-wartime debt. We don't have a declared war, so it's fair to say that. Wartime debt. In fact, actually, probably compared to even wartime, I think we're at an all-time high. I think our debt is going to be like 150% of the economy here after they pass this budget. And again, Nancy Pelosi's right up there in the front, sort of like barking orders. There was a dictator. For those of you who are younger, you may not know this history, but maybe you will. But anyway, there was, you probably know that there was the Soviet Union, and there were countries that were in the Soviet bloc. They were called behind the Iron Curtain, Eastern Europe, and mostly, and countries that aren't obviously in that position today, but they were all run by dictators under under the Soviet Union. One of them was Romania. There was a guy by the name of Nicholas I've always mispronounced his name, Ceausescu, and he had a wife, Elena. And as the Iron Curtain was falling, as the Soviet Union was collapsing, and then their satellite states, like Eastern and Central Europe, European countries, were no longer being protected by them. And then they each had to deal with their own individual dictatorships. And the Ceausescus were really bad people. If you look at their history, they tortured. They used any means necessary to retain power. And Ceausescu was really, really rough on his people, and they ultimately revolted once they realized that he wasn't under the protection of the powerful Soviet army. They went and they got him, and they held a trial, and the trial was fast, and they led Mr. Ceausescu and his wife Elena out into a courtyard and put them in front of a firing squad. And these people were so arrogant, so full of their own power, that Elena Ceausescu was still barking orders at the guards who were about to shoot her, and at the firing squad, screaming at them, "Don't you know who we are, and how dare you?" And then they just shot her and put her down. And it's sort of that level of arrogance that reminds me of Nancy Pelosi. She'll never cop to being wrong. There are big issues here, and in the sense that she'll never admit to being wrong. And I think there's one part of not admitting to being wrong because you just have the inability to do that because your ego is so fragile that you can't. I mean, most of us have that. We don't want to admit that we're wrong. It's not an easy thing to do. I think the best scientists, if there are any still around, because even scientists is completely compromised now by the state and by ideology, which is a terrible thing. But the best scientists are willing to admit that a thesis or a hypothesis is wrong if the evidence shows that they made a mistake, and they just accept it and then course correct in the pursuit of truth. Not a lot of people can do that, and it's hard. Your ego gets tied into it. It's sort of the more innocent side of it. But then there's the innocent side of an inability to admit you're wrong. And then there's another side, which is that the projection of power. And this is the camp that I think Pelosi falls into. An inability to admit that you're wrong, that you've made a mistake, because you want to constantly project power so that you can maintain control. And those people will go right to the very end, like Elena Ceausescu, and never admit they were wrong, never show any fear, and they'll go right down to the to the end of their lives behaving this way, and drag everybody down with them. And that is the thing that's really sort of got me concerned right now. I can talk about specific things. Do I want to reduce taxes? Of course I do. I want the state to have as little revenue as possible. I want you to keep as much money as you can possibly keep. All these big issues, these issues, I'm happy to discuss those all day long. But as I get deeper into the campaign, and I'll come back to specific issues, I suppose, as the campaign wears on. But I want to take this opportunity to talk about my big concerns about where we are going as a country. And today, I think it was today there was an interaction between Rand Paul and the proposed what is she going for? She's the current head of health matters for Pennsylvania. She's a trans woman. I think it's Rachel Levine. She's a pediatrician. Yeah, this is, I think they had an event today, and so Rachel Levine is being proposed by the Biden administration as assistant health secretary, and it requires a Senate confirmation. So apparently Rand Paul is on that committee that makes a recommendation to the broader Senate, the subcommittee, and or the committee, whatever it is. And so he was questioning her. And one of the things that he was bringing up is, can you say that children shouldn't be allowed to make the decisions about changing their own gender? And can you put that picture up, Mario? And if you haven't seen that video, it is astonishing. He cannot get her to admit that all she keeps saying is that issues of gender are complex, and she wouldn't go on the record. And Rand finally says, I wanted the record to reflect that the nominee would not say that children shouldn't be allowed to be involved in transgender surgery, hormone therapy, that kind of thing. Now, look, I don't care where you stand on these issues. I've been so supportive of trans people. We had a candidate who ran for represented the Republican Party who was transgender last year, and I am just it's part of my soul, who I am. I'm fundamentally committed to treating people with respect and all the time, just respect them. And people want to live their lives and they want to be addressed in a certain way. I'm more than happy to do that. I have no qualms with that. But you can't change reality to match your ideology. And what we have here is we have ideologues run amok. People who don't want to go back to that theme I was talking about earlier, who are so committed to the power, to the pursuit of power, that they're unwilling to say they made a mistake. It's clearly insane. It's clearly absurd to say that it's okay for children to have their, as young as 3 years old, as young as 10 years old. To say that they're going to change their gender and to actually, give them operations on their genitals and give them hormone therapy. This is insane. This is crazy land. Again, I treat people with respect, but I don't treat this with respect. This is absurd. This is craziness. And this is where we are. We have a hearing where a nominee as an assistant health secretary can't say that. So, we can talk about tax policy all day. We can talk about, We can talk about, fiscal policy. We can talk about, budgeting and what should be funded, what shouldn't be funded. Talk about foreign policy. Happy to engage in all those things, and I've discussed those all on my website. But, we have a bigger problem that we're facing right now. We have ideologues unwilling who are going to stay so committed to their ideology and shame us for not being part of their ideology in order just to get power. And if we don't get a grip on this, if we don't make some commitment to the truth and an ability to admit when we're wrong in order to pursue a better quality of life, we are in massive trouble as a country. And so, again, as a candidate, happy to talk about the policies, but this is the thing that's really got my attention at the moment, is that we are in the middle of a self-immolation as a country because we're so unable to say that these ideologies are really, we're in a situation where 10 years ago, I'd use a reductio argument. You feel free to look at the Wikipedia entry. It's actually very good on this form of argumentation. It's called reductio ad absurdum. One form of it is you take an idea and reduce it to take it to its logical extension, or reduce it to its most absurd conclusion, and that's the reductio part of it. And we're in a stage right now that would have been part of a reductio argument 10 years ago. We are in an absurd situation where a assistant health secretary nominee won't say that 3-year-olds shouldn't have their genitals altered at their own choice. So anyway, this goes back to, I don't know, I got a whole thing about it. I'm kind of really discouraged about that. The fact that Joe Biden, the president of the United States, would nominate somebody like that is lunacy. It is terrifying, and I just can't believe that the majority of America thinks Joe Biden's on the right track with this kind of a nominee or this kind of approach. And I have to say, there's a foreign element to this as well. I'm not even going to say the name of the country, but you'll know exactly who I'm talking about, because this country's economic might is coming on so strong that corporate America has completely wilted to it. They effectively conceded America to this foreign influence. And this foreign influence and other foreign influences who want to weaken us, must be thrilled to see the condition that we're in right now, to see that we have nominated someone like this, Dr. Rachel Levine, to such a high-level position that the President of the United States would stake his reputation on nominating someone who can't say that 3-year-olds shouldn't be able to decide to alter their genitalia. So, anyway, that's where we are right now. That's one of the reasons why I'm running. We are up and about on the really, this has gotten me so motivated to run, to be in the middle of this fight. Had a great meeting this morning about some exciting things we're going to be doing on the campaign. One of the things about talking about the campaign is that you can only talk about the things that you've done in the past in the campaign, because if you talk about what you're going to do, it actually sends a signal to your opponents and competitors about what you're going to do, and then they can adjust to it and maybe even steal those ideas. But trust me when I tell you, in the next week or so, you're going to start seeing things come out of the campaign, very exciting things. So I am as motivated about challenging Nancy Pelosi on these big issues. And I feel like for the first time we actually have, one of the tough things about dealing with somebody like Pelosi is that she's like many of us have now with social media, is she's created a bubble, but she's not a social media bubble. She's just got a life bubble around her so that she is shielded from criticism. So, 10 years ago, I released a video that mocked her that went viral. And I've told this story before, but it's relevant to this moment. So let me continue with it. So we do this video. It's very funny. Mocks her, depicts her as the Wicked Witch of the West, and I get invited to do a bunch of media appearances. So I go to Washington, and I have 2 straight days of media appearances. And I happen to go with guys for a drink afterwards, my team at that time. And we go into some pub, and we're sitting outside. And make a long story short, who shows up at that pub for some other event but Nancy Pelosi? It's so weird because I live a mile from her. She lives 1 block south of me and then a mile west. And so we live really close to one another. And I have to go to Washington, D.C. to run into her. But anyway, we run into her, and we're chatting a little bit. And I said, hey, thanks for being a good sport about the video. We're just trying to have a little fun with the campaign. And a couple of days later, she looked at me, by the way, puzzled, like she didn't know anything about that. So her bubble had her protected from that. And so a couple of days later, the video gets taken down from YouTube because there was a copyright infringement complaint. And it seems like friends of Miss Pelosi may have had some influence in that. I'll tell that story another time. I've told it before. But I'm excited because, that was an attempt to actually get through to her that she's doing some insane things back then. Since then, she's only reinforced the bubble that she's in. I'm excited about this campaign because I feel like we've got a way to pierce that bubble, to get a message out there so consistently, so regularly that even she can't avoid it. And so stick with us right now because we're doing some very exciting things, and it could be the first time that we actually have a way of getting through to her. The other thing, I have another funny idea, but this report has been kind of heavy, and so I'm really not in the mood to tell you some other funny things I'm thinking about with the campaign, but maybe we'll get around to doing that. Let me just take a quick look before I run and see if you guys have any questions for me today. Mario on Facebook, this is running through John Dennis Report or John Dennis for Congress?
John Dennis Report.
Okay, John Dennis Report. Yeah, so please follow us there, John Dennis Report on Facebook. And I got to go to Periscope and see what we have in terms of... Now, Mario, when we do that, will the John Dennis for Congress followers be able to see that we're live?
No, they will not, unless we share it with them.
Can you share it to both?
Yes, we can.
Oh, we should do that then. Yeah, we should do that because there aren't that many, people who are going to see through the John Dennis Report over here. Let me just take a quick look here, see if there are any questions or, we should probably do a day too, Mario, where we just get questions and comments for folks.
We can make a Q&A.
Yeah, let's do that. We should get that. Okay. Anyway, so that's about it. I'm more concerned about the bigger issues these days, and stopping the cultural disaster and the real destruction in the United States. And people say, oh well, focus on those secondary issues, but we have this big problem, that big problem. Hey, they all go hand in hand. If you think that the loss of the staggering amount of federal debt that's out there is not connected to the ideology that is that we've talked about today, you're missing the big point. It's all connected together, and you have to address the insanity of the policies that are being talked about openly in Washington now. And you have to start getting people who are committed to objective reality, some semblance of objective reality. People willing to say, oh yeah, I should probably rethink that. so that we don't have a country that is completely weakened. I mean, think about how weakened our position is when we carry a federal debt that's at 150% of the federal revenues. And incidentally, all these low interest rates. I mean, that's the level of debt that's held not just at the federal level, but corporate and personal, student loans and cars and credit card, all that sort of stuff. All those mortgages. I mean, all combined, we have never seen this level of debt in this country, probably anywhere else. Probably it wasn't possible to have this level of debt in any place, in any place in history, because we're the world's reserve currency. But I know people who think, if we have to go through a restructuring, we go through a restructuring. If we have to go through a restructuring with this level of debt, a lot of people are going to get stiffed and they're going to be really upset, and they're going to, there's going to be a battle royale to decide who, how people take haircuts in restructurings. But think about how weak our position is when we're in this level of debt, and when we've shipped our manufacturing base overseas. Think about the countries that benefit from that. These are fundamentally huge questions, and all the nonsense that we're talking about right now, the ideological nonsense that's being pushed on us, it's all a massive distraction to these huge issues that are forcing America into a really vulnerable position. So, anyway, that's these are the things that I'm more concerned about, the big issues right now, and how we address them. One of the things that we've got to do, and we'll talk about this in a future report, is the situation with the teachers unions. Right now, one of the good things about the pandemic is the teachers unions are getting exposed for what they're really about. And these are the kids, the people who are, polluting our kids' heads with the curriculum that is so anti-success and anti-good, anti-life in a way, right? You can't live well if your mind is polluted with these kinds of ideas. And the public schools, incidentally, aren't, they don't just impact the public schools; they impact the curriculum and the approaches of private schools as well. So this is an issue that's got to be addressed. In fact, we'll probably get into that next week, because I want to talk about those teachers unions, especially right now when we're seeing what they're really all about. But again, coming back to the to the big problems, we have got to start talking about these, and we're going to start doing that in our plans to pierce the Pelosi bubble over the course of the campaign. And I'm looking forward to sharing those things that we do after we do them, and having a laugh and having some fun along the way. So, in any event, that's the John Dennis Report for today. Please follow us on Facebook at John Dennis Report, Real John Dennis on Twitter, John Dennis Report on YouTube. Please subscribe there, and Real John Dennis on Instagram. Have a great weekend, and we will see you next week with some exciting and interesting news. See you then.